I was just 7 years old. Every year, my church would put on the most epic vacation Bible school that you've ever seen. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Vacation Bible School, or its popular street name, VBS, let me break it down for you. Imagine if a daycare and the dollar store version of CIY Move had a baby. It would totally be VBS. That meant for 3 hours a day, I'd be subjected to a week of ridiculous Bible songs, red fruit punch, and paper mache Jesus crafts. And if you were a parent, that meant you could unload your ankle biter at the church for a week of free babysitting. Now, at the end of the week, the church would try to produce this low-budget, off-Broadway style musical for the parents, made up of a cast of just a handful of trusted kids picked from a pool of snot-nosed delinquents. And at the ripe age of 7 years old, I was chosen for the lead. I was handed a lollipop and a script and asked to go memorize my lines in preparation for the production just 3 days later. It was quick turnaround, no doubt, but I was confident I could do it. Well, a couple days had passed, and I'd glanced through the script a couple of times, just enough to get the main idea of the deal. It wasn't until Thursday night, the night before the production, that I really dug in. Somehow, I distinctly remember sitting in front of my TV with an Atari 2600 controller in my hand. Atari fans in the back there, I love that. And the script was resting on the floor next to me when I heard the voice of my mom magically break through my game time concentration. She said, "Dave," that's her voice and that's what she called me because that's my name. "Dave, are you ready for the play tomorrow night? Do you have your lines memorized?" said the voice from the kitchen. I responded, "Yeah, Mom, I'm fine." Though deep down inside, I knew I wasn't. Panicked, I did the little kid version of an all-night cram session and stayed up till 9 o'clock p.m. memorizing lines. It was the best I could do. Now, there was no dress rehearsal. It was just straight to the main event. The set was made up of painted cardboard boxes that kind of stretched across the stage to look like a city, clearly constructed by some artsy homeschool mom with too much time on her hands. The room was filled with moms and dads with their cameras strapped around their necks and their cheesy parent smiles plastered on their faces, even though they knew the week of free childcare had just ended. And after an enthusiastic opening number, I took the stage. And totally blanked. A room full of parents waiting in anticipation for me to say something, anything, but I was blank. One of the adult actors tried to cover up the slip, but everyone knew. There was another song. This one was happy, followed by another round of a 7-year-old boy standing center stage, frozen with nothing to say. Like a loop of terror, this rhythm continued for about an hour. Song followed by shame, followed by song, followed by shame, standing center stage. I just wanted to die. And as the final number ended, the compounding shame hit me. And I knew if I could just get to the back of the building where the classrooms were, no one would find me. And there I could be alone and hide. So I ran. And so that Friday night, a small preschool classroom in the back of Ohio Church became my cave. Listen, I know a thing or two about caves, about feeling something so powerful that you just want to hide. And over the years, I've discovered that I'm not alone, and that cave hiding is not a one-time occurrence reserved for 7-year-old boys who tank their church's VBS productions, but for some, it's a way of living. You may notice it. when you walk into the cafeteria and there's this flutter of fear inside your chest, right? You're on guard, so you navigate the tables just to find a seat where you'd be welcome. You've been laughed at and rejected before, and you never want to let that happen again. You know, maybe you have a cave too. Or maybe you're alone in your room at home and you're staring at your phone, and you're aware that you've got hundreds of likes, but 0 real friends. And nobody knows this, but maybe your house is a war zone, and you've absorbed a lot of shrapnel. Thank God for your cave, right? Or maybe you're here. You've crossed a few lines with God, and you're confident He's disappointed. And now you're on this free fall of shame, and you just can't face Him. Don't you feel the stony cave all around you? You may feel protected, but you're alone. But you know, it hasn't always been this way, has it? You know, there used to be a time when you would bolt fearlessly into a room, unguarded and unashamed. Don't you remember? Years before you were 7, you didn't feel odd or different or stressed or worried or self-conscious or hopeless or outcast or numb. No. When you were a kid, you felt fully alive. You would giggle when you'd introduce yourself to strangers, and you'd laugh and dance and sing anytime you wanted, regardless of who was around. You were totally and completely free. But somewhere along the line, something went wrong. Now, here's what I would guess for many of us. If I could drop into your life and look at those places where you let people in and where you keep people out, if I could evaluate those places where you feel alive and vulnerable and mine out those dark places where you feel hard and guarded, it's possible that I would discover that there's a part of you that's terrified and hiding in a cave of your own making, guarded, protected, and alone. But you know, it doesn't have to be that way. You weren't designed to hide out in a cave. You were created for something far greater. What if there was a way that you could take a step toward becoming free and fearless again? That somehow you could move out of this dark, stony cave back into a world of wonder, hope, and fulfillment. You know, I actually believe it's possible. In fact, if you look closely at the next chapter of Elijah's story, I honestly think that you'll discover your next step toward living that wide open kind of freedom that maybe you haven't seen for years. Well, so far this week, Elijah's story has been pretty epic, right? On top of Mount Carmel, he took on the prophets of Baal and ended the death match with fire from heaven on a water-soaked altar of 12 stones. 450 prophets killed, and Queen Jezebel was ticked off. So naturally, she decided she wanted to kill Elijah. So for some reason, she sent a messenger instead of a hitman to break the news. Here's what the message said. She said, "By this time tomorrow, you'll be as dead as one of those prophets." Queen Jezebel's message was delivered, and fear rocked Elijah. And somehow, in spite of seeing God drop fire from heaven, Elijah panics and he ran. Now, here's what I know. If you ever find yourself scared and running and you do it long enough, you'll eventually end up in a cave. And Elijah was no different. So after over 40 days of running, Elijah dead ends into the sacred place known as the Mountain of God. Now, I don't know if he knew this, but this place had some serious history. This was the same place that God spoke to Moses in a burning bush. And it was here that God delivered the 10 commandments. And there, in the side of the mountain of God, Elijah crawls in a cave to spend the night. Now, for Elijah, this is the final scene, right? He doesn't expect his story to be continued or for God to show up. In fact, no one would be surprised if the screen faded to black, followed by credits scrolling upward to an epic fanfare to close this tragic story. For Elijah, this was the lowest moment in his life. Like, he was consumed with shame and despair. Stalactites and cave crickets bear witness to that despair. The dark circle under his dusty eyes that testified to his exhaustion. Elijah was alone, hopeless, and ashamed. Then God spoke to Elijah in the belly of the cave. He asked a significant question. God said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" In other words, Elijah, what's going on? I designed you to be free, to live without fear in your unique kingdom calling, but you've panicked, you stopped trusting, and you've walked away. God, I designed you to be a kingdom worker, not a cave dweller. Elijah, what are you doing here? Don't you remember that when you were hungry, I sent ravens to deliver food to you day and night, and mid-drought, I called some random woman to sacrifice and give you something to eat? Did you forget about the barrels of grain that never wasted away, or the jar of oil that never ceased? Did you miss that I raised a boy from the dead, sent fire from heaven, and allowed the rain to fall? Has your fear for tomorrow completely erased my faithfulness from the past? Oh, Elijah, what are you doing here? You know, I wonder if there was a way that I could reach that part of you that's hiding, that part of you that's caved up and protected. I wonder if God would ask you that same question. What are you doing here? This is not the life I want for you. I want to see you living out your calling as a powerful and fearless kingdom worker. I see you laughing and dancing, filled to the brim with the joy of your freedom, but instead you're hiding and running scared. What are you doing here? You see, it's the cave and it's the hiding that's the problem. You see, if you are bunkered up in your cave, you cannot, by definition, also be free. The two do not coexist. You will never experience that childlike wonder and joy you had when you were a kid while you're locked down in all-out protection mode. You see, the cave and the hiding is the problem. You may feel protected, but the cave will almost certainly rob you of joy and freedom and keep you from feeling fully alive. So if you want to be free and experience that childlike wonder and joy that you had when you were younger, you're gonna have to identify and deal with your cave. There's absolutely no way around it. Now, I remember going to the circus as a kid. Anybody? Yeah. So with cotton candy in hand, I sat right in the center and would stare as the trapeze artist would float through the air and would literally freak out at the high wire act. Every time I would freak out. There was never a net. And really, nobody wants to see a grown man in stretchy pants splat on the concrete. Except that guy back there. It still freaks me out. But my favorite was the Lion Tamer. Anybody? Okay, you and me, right. Now that act always stole the show for me. Now, the uniform was fairly standard, glittery vest, great abs. But that dude could stand in a ring with a whip and a half dozen tigers and put on the greatest show you've ever seen. So thrilling. Man, I love that act. But this classic move was my favorite. Man versus beast with only a chair as protection. Now, I wouldn't be caught dead doing that. Actually, I probably totally would be caught dead. But seriously, I've always wondered why the chair. You know, maybe the lion tamer entered the ring and reached down and forgot his whip and was like, and grabbed the closest thing he could find to push back the beast. It totally worked. Actually, I Googled it. It's the four legs that confuses the lion. Now, if you'll look closely, you'll notice that the lion tamer is in full-on cave mode right now. You see, the chair is a fantastic source of protection for the lion tamer. Now, the lion over here is terrifying, freaky, could easily tear you limb from limb, but with this chair, I can create a pretty hardcore boundary to keep me safe, right? I call this lion tamer pose the fear position. Because honestly, anytime you're afraid, this is actually what you do almost every time. In fact, fear is the primary emotion that sends you to and keeps you in your cave. And whenever you feel threatened, you create some sort of boundary or cave between yourself and the perceived danger. But, and this is a big but, like a ginormous but. Some of you have one of those and know what I'm talking about. I don't know what to make of that right there. Some adult get control of your kids over in this region. Calling the lawn gnome. All right, back to our talk. So there's a ginormous problem with using your cave as protection. Now, here's the problem. Your cave, it's not one-dimensional. It actually fully envelops you, right? So the moment you step into your cave to start protecting yourself, your heart has no great way of telling the difference between danger and safety. Everything is a potential threat, and your guard rarely comes down. You remember that flutter of fear you had in your chest when you walked into the lunchroom alone for the first time? Before you found your friends. Now think about this. If you think about it, no one was laughing at you. No one was rejecting you. And you weren't actually in any physical danger. But your body didn't know it, so you navigated the tables in a little bit of a guarded, emotionally protected kind of way, always scanning for danger. See what I mean? It's like once you learn the best way to protect your heart, you tend to live in that cave of safety all the time, with everyone, even with God. It's so subtle, and it doesn't take long for your cave to become a prison. In fact, the only difference between a cave and a prison is your ability to step out. And those who are unable to step out are trapped. So yes, your cave does protect you from danger, but it also traps you and keeps everything else out. I don't know if you understand what I mean. Let me introduce you to a volunteer I have. Is there a volunteer back there? Let's hear for Isaac, everybody. Have a stand over here, Isaac. All right, Isaac. You sit right here. Sit right here. I'm gonna put my cave right here. Isaac, say hello to the ladies.
Hi, ladies. I'm probably gonna get in trouble for that, though.
Yeah. I didn't prep you for that. Isaac is from Eastside Christian Church over here. Now, Isaac, let me ask you a question. What grade are you in?
I am a graduated senior.
You're a graduated senior. Here's the tattoo. How long did it take for you to get that tattoo?
11 and a half hours.
No. Like, you graduated, and then when did you do it?
Oh.
It wasn't a trick question.
Like, I did it while I was in school.
Oh, wow. That's something. Something else. All right, Isaac, here's the deal. By the way, how's your love life, Isaac?
Amazing, I hope.
After this?
I hope.
All right. I'm not going to dig into that anymore. Isaac, here's the deal. Isaac, I want you to pretend to be a normal person.
All right.
Can you do that?
Hopefully.
All right. Now, let's say maybe we're even friends, okay? Now, Isaac, you don't know this, but I've always got my guard up, okay?
Right.
And rarely does it come down. In fact, I have learned the best way to protect my heart, and I tend to live in this cave of safety all the time. In fact, I might be in protection mode from something that happened to me years ago with someone that's not even you. Now, here's what I want you to do, Isaac. I want you to try and give me a genuine, heartfelt hug while I'm in my cave. Can you do that?
No.
No, I want you to try. I'm going to count to 3, and I actually want you to try genuine, heartfelt. You wait until I count to 3. Now, here's the deal. You play football, right?
Yeah.
You could totally tackle and kill me. But that's not a hug. I'm looking for a genuine, heartfelt hug. You got what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Ready on the count of 3, genuine, heartfelt hug. 1, 2, 3, go.
Ow. Ow. Ow.
I just totally got you. Stop. I loved punching you in the neck with the chair. Now, here's the deal, Isaac. Here's the deal. I've got a question for you. What's the only way, like, could you give me a genuine, heartfelt hug right now?
No.
You couldn't give me one right now? No.
Only if you put down the chair.
Oh, yeah. But let me ask you a question. Like, Isaac, what if I don't want to put down the chair?
Then I can't hug you.
True. So, Isaac, so if I put down the chair, you can hug me, but otherwise you can't, right?
Correct.
So how do I know I can absolutely trust you, Isaac?
You
I can't.
can't. No, all right. You'd be taking a risk in trusting me.
Yeah, so it's a big risk.
It is a big risk.
So let me ask you a question. Isaac, if I put down this chair, can you be kind and gentle and worthy of trust? Because it's a risk for me to put down this chair and trust you. Can you do that?
Of course I can.
All right. You sure?
Of course.
Give me a hug. Yeah. Thanks, man. That's awesome. Give Isaac a hand. All right. Hey, those of you at Eastside, I think Isaac has like 2 mosquito bites on his arms. He might need some medication for that. I know. So listen, if you want to be free and experience that childlike wonder and joy, you've got to understand that it's the cave that's the problem. Now, I know that there are hundreds of ways that I see people creating caves of protection for themselves. But tonight, I'm guessing that most of you are sitting in at least one of 5 caves, and that cave is the very thing that's holding you back and keeping you from becoming everything that God created you to be. So, we're going to go through 5 caves, and I'm wanting you to help identify the cave that you're in, because you can't move forward until you do that. Here's our first cave. It's actually the lion tamer pose that we've been dealing with. I call it the cave of fear. Here's the position. Now, many of you know this, the cave of fear, because whenever you're afraid, this is what you do almost every time. You create some sort of boundary between yourself and the perceived danger. It's the cave of fear, and many of you are alone because you found yourself pushing people away and keeping people from being close. Some of you are trapped in the cave of fear. Here's the second cave. I call this the cave of anger. And it's almost a different form of the first cave. Here's what it looks like. Right? Do you see how this could create a cave of protection? Right? Nobody wants to get near that guy. In fact, this is the same technique you use if a black bear approaches. I don't know if you knew this. If a black bear approaches, you're supposed to stand your ground. Isaac, now, come on, don't be distracting over there, Isaac. Was that a proposal? Here's what I know. You're not dealing with the cave of fear, lady. There's something else going on back there. That's all I gotta say. All right. You guys are crazy. Listen up, everybody. The cave of anger. Like, listen, if a black bear approaches you, this is actually what you're supposed to do. I don't know if you know this. You're supposed to stand your ground, Get as loud and big as you possibly can and fight back. But, listen to this. If a grizzly bear approaches, you're supposed to do the opposite. You're supposed to crawl in the fetal position and protect your neck. So the moral of the story is, know your bears, right? This was actually a mind-blowing concept to me when I realized that angry people are typically caved-in, fearful people. Their cave is just louder, bigger, and quite a bit scarier than the other caves. So maybe your deal is the cave of fear, and you're pushing people away. Maybe it's the cave of anger. Maybe it's this one. I call this the cave of apathy. Here's how this works. Here's the deal. If you're numb enough, distant enough, sarcastic or cynical enough, nobody can hurt you. It's the cave of apathy. Your dentist actually knows this. That's why before he fills a cavity, he shoots you with Novocaine before he starts drilling, because he knows that if you're numb enough, you don't feel the pain. But numbness has a dark side. Listen, numbness has a dark side. You know why the dentist tells you to sip a milkshake or eat soft foods after you've had your cavity filled? Because he knows you're so numb that if you eat something substantial, you could chew your tongue into pieces and not even know it. So listen. I want to have a come to Jesus with you. I want to have a come to Jesus meeting with you on this one. Because I know right now there are those of you who are trapped in this cave right now. And all week long, you've been easily deflecting every potential move of God with negativity, cynicism, sarcasm. If this is you, I want you to know that you could be missing a massive work of God in your life this week. So let's just claim it right now and all be honest. The truth is, you're bunkered up, scared and protected. In fact, if you pay close enough attention, you can actually feel the fear behind this wall of apathy, can't you? You know, in Scripture, they call this having a hard heart. In other words, you have this impenetrable layer of protection around your heart. In other words, you're all caved up. So maybe you started protecting yourself with the cave of fear and you push people away. Maybe your go-to is you just get angry and you drive people away. Maybe even this week, there are those of you who've been missing God because you've been doing this. And you've been numb. God can't speak to you when you're like that. Here's another cave. Call this the cave of loneliness. Maybe this looks familiar. You know, a survey was done last year that surveyed 20,000 people of various age groups. You know what they discovered? That your generation is the loneliest generation alive today. According to the survey, 47%, nearly half of you, feel entirely left out. 46% feel alone, and 43% feel entirely isolated, and that your relationships aren't meaningful. Sounds like many of you are familiar with this cave of loneliness. But have you ever noticed how easy it is to blame our loneliness on other people? We say things like, no one ever asks me to do anything, or no one ever calls me or texts me, or no one asks me out or finds me attractive. And we quickly assume that we don't have any friends and that we're unlovable. When maybe the truth is that you're caved up and you've sacrificed emotional intimacy on the altar of safety. In other words, you feel alone because you are alone. Let me say it gently. Maybe for you, safety has become way more important than relationship. But the truth is, you are so worthy of love, and relationship is so worth the risk. So maybe you protect yourself with the cave of fear. Or maybe it's the cave of anger. Or maybe it's the cave of apathy. Or maybe it's the cave of loneliness. Here's the fifth cave. I call this the cave of shame. I'll be honest, this cave is heavy and dark and lonely. And if you're in this cave, you probably feel helpless and weighed down with shame so consuming that you end up pushing everyone else away. You might not even see a way out. You know, I kind of think this is the cave that Elijah was in. Remember? Here's Elijah. He's alone and wanting to die. He's hopeless. And then God asks this question. He says, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Now, listen to how Elijah responds. He says, "I have fervently served the Lord God Almighty. But the people of Israel, they've broken their covenant with you, torn down your altar, and killed all your prophets. And I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me." I don't know if you hear the failure in his voice. His words are actually dripping with shame. It was as if Elijah spent his whole life trying to initiate change, and nothing seems to have changed. And now there he is. He's pushed everybody away, and he's even questioning his value as a human being. It's the cave of shame. I don't know which one you're in. Is it the cave of fear? The cave of anger? The cave of apathy? Loneliness? Or shame? But I love how God speaks to Elijah while he was in the cave. God's voice enters the cave and says, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." In other words, Elijah, step out of your cave. Come on out and let me see you. Let me see the scars, the fear, the guilt, the shame, that stuff you don't even want to talk about. And you will see and experience a God who really cares. Elijah, step out of your cave. It was a call to vulnerability, an invitation to intimacy. It's a pathway to freedom. And notice what happens. Elijah doesn't move. The same voice that would one day call a dead Lazarus to come out of his tomb was now calling Elijah to come out of his cave, and Elijah didn't move. I can only imagine what Elijah was thinking. That I hear what you're saying, God, and I know all of creation obeys you, but I'm not coming out of my cave. I just can't face you with my failure and shame. And if I'm honest, I know I've stopped trusting and gone another direction. Lord, I just don't trust your reaction. I just can't face you. I wonder if you've ever felt that. Well, maybe even tonight, maybe you've heard the nudging of God from deep down in your spirit to step out, take a risk, and be seen. And you didn't move. You just stayed frozen, guarded in the safety of your cave. Now, honestly, it does make sense that Elijah would be a little nervous about stepping out of his cave. Let me explain. In the 9th century BC, it was common thought that Baal showed his anger and judgment on the people through wildly dramatic acts of nature. After all, Baal was the weather god with power over lightning, wind, rain, and fertility. They gave him fertility too. I don't know why. So lightning, wind, rain, and fertility. So imagine you're a 9th century dude and you're walking to your dorm room, right? And you're struck by lightning. Your friends might say, "Ooh, dude, you must have done something to make God mad." And so for the people of Elijah's day, dramatic acts of nature indicated that God was fiercely mad and that you must have done something to tick God off. Now, Elijah didn't believe in Baal, but that was still common thought for the people of the day. Now back to the story. There's Elijah. He's in his cave, right? God said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." And Elijah doesn't move. He's just in his cave. Now, listen to what Scripture says happens next. Then there was a powerful wind that tore the mountains apart and shattered rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. Do you see what's happening here? This is exactly how Baal would have responded to Elijah, with judgment and rage, wind blowing like a hurricane, rocks smashing against the mountain like some Avengers fight scene. But God is not in the judgment of the wind. It's almost as if Elijah is learning who God is by discovering who God isn't. God is not a vengeful, spiteful God like Baal. Instead, he's a God of love, compassion, and gentleness. It was almost as if God was saying, today I'm not here to judge you, Elijah. It's safe to step out of your cave and be seen. Right after the wind, God underscores his point again. And after the wind came an earthquake. But God was not in the earthquake. It was almost as if, can you imagine if you're Elijah in an earthquake in the cave? That had to be terrifying. But it's made clear that God is not in the judgment of the earthquake. And then after the earthquake, there was a fire. But God was not in the fire. At this moment, God is making his point overabundantly crystal clear. His point is highlighted and underscored. He's saying, I am ready for you to step out of your cave. It is time for you to step out, and it is safe for you to step out. Step out of your cave. Come out of this guarded fear into a hope of wonder, hope, and fulfillment. I know you can trust me. I know you can do it. And today I am not in the rumble and destruction of judgment that somehow you imagine or expect. Trust me. So first, there is the wind blowing like a hurricane, followed by this earthquake that shook the foundation of the earth. Then a roaring fire outside the mouth of the cave. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. Soft, understanding, peaceful, reassuring. Do you notice the contrast? This is almost as if, even in the Old Testament, the prodigal son was coming home and he was being welcomed with compassion instead of judgment, understanding instead of anger, reassurance instead of rage. It was the soft, gentle whisper of God's kindness that always leads to repentance. When Elijah heard this, pulled his cloak over his face, went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. And then he heard, in one sentence, that familiar voice of God ask that question once again. What are you doing here, Elijah? You know, I stayed caved in that preschool classroom for about an hour. Parents and kids had all taken their turns heaping Oreos and vanilla wafers on their white napkins and sipping red fruit punch from their styrofoam cups. The painted cardboard city was now a mountain of cardboard resting center stage, and a crowd was beginning to thin. Walled in that preschool classroom, I was buried in shame and despair, but I knew I needed to come out. So I walked slowly at first. And then midway down the lonely hallway, I saw and locked eyes with my dad. And where I expected to see disappointment, I saw compassion. And my pace quickened to a slow sprint, and I leaped into the arms of my father. And at that moment, ironically, I felt more safe, secure, and loved in the arms of my father than I ever did in the cold, dark confines of that cave. Maybe it's time for you to take a step toward being seen. Perhaps you've hidden in your cave long enough. And God's words to Elijah just echo in this room tonight. What are you doing here? It's time to step out of your cave, step out of your guarded fear into a world of wonder, hope, and fulfillment. I know it's terrifying. I know that you're afraid of judgment and that people will laugh at you, but it's safe to step out of your cave. Listen, once you've identified your cave, your next step is to step out. And so far, the cave, you've been in your cave too long. The cave has robbed you of joy and freedom and kept you from being everything that God wanted you to be. Maybe tonight, it is time for you to take a step out of your cave.